We should quickly add a majority also don't believe the current Democratic president has set the right policies to fix the fix we're in. Question is really, who can? I'm Governor Perry.
I know back and forth, but Michael Dukakis created jobs 3 times faster than you did, Mitt.
Well, as a matter of fact, George Bush and his predecessor created jobs at a faster rate than you did, Governor.
That's not correct.
Yeah, it is correct.
Nice to see everybody came prepared for tonight. Mr. Kane, same question.
Let's cut to the chase. This is what business people do and politicians don't do. Here's how I would fix this economy. First, eliminate the current tax code. It is a drain on entrepreneurs. It's the biggest barrier that's holding this economy back. And what I would do is to propose a bold plan, which I've already released. I call it my 999 economic growth plan. Throw out the current tax code, a 9% tax on corporate income, a 9% tax on personal income, and a 9% national sales tax. If 10% is good enough for God, 9% ought to be good enough for the federal government.
Is there a line with you? Where do you draw it? Does this include things like making cars safe, making medicine safe, air traffic control, controlling the jets above our heads?
Well, I think in theory, if you understood the free market and a free society, you don't need government to do. The place takes care of it. Just think if we had the regulations on the market that dealt with the bankruptcies, that had to go bankrupt. We wouldn't have been able to bail out the big banks and the big corporations and dump on the poor people. Well, so if you need detailed regulations, you can do it at the state level, but the federal government is not authorized to nitpick every little transaction. The way they use the interstate commerce clause is outrageous as far as I'm concerned.
Well, 30 seconds more for devil's advocate here, because would you then put it on the drug companies to say, no, we're bringing this to market?
But who ends up doing the regulations on the drugs? They do as much harm as good. They don't take good care of us. Who gets to write the regulations? The bureaucrats write the regulations, but who writes the laws? The lobbyists have control. So the lobbyist from the drug industry has control of writing the regulations.
The fact that President Obama doesn't come to the Reagan Library to try to figure out how to create jobs, doesn't talk to any of these 3 governors to learn how to create jobs, doesn't talk to Herman Cain to learn how to create jobs, tells you that this is a president so committed to class warfare and so committed to bureaucratic socialism that he can't possibly be effective in jobs.
Where do the poor come in? Where do they place? In this party? On this stage?
And we didn't pass welfare reform to cut money. We didn't pass welfare reform to punish anybody. We changed the welfare system because it was punishing people. We had a federal system that was creating a culture of dependency. And we went out and talked to the American public and said, trust us to end this federal entitlement, put a work requirement in place, put a time limit on welfare, give the flexibility to the states with a block grant, and we will transform this system from a dependency system to a transitional system. We transformed the welfare system because we believed in the dignity of every human person to be able to provide for themselves. We believed in bottom-up, not top-down. We need to do the same thing with food stamps. We need to do the same thing with housing programs. All of these other means-tested entitlement programs that are creating a culture of dependency have to be changed, not to save money, but to save people's lives.
Beneficial. But I was trying to get your attention a little while ago. There's 8 of us up here. I'm a physician, but you sure weren't going to ask me any medical questions. But I would like to address that just a little bit. First off, you know, the governor of Texas criticized the governor of Massachusetts for Romney Care, but he wrote a really fancy letter supporting Hillary Care. So we probably ought to ask him about that. But mandates, that's what the whole society is about. That's what we do all the time. That's what government does. Mandate, mandate, mandate. And what we talk so much about the Obama mandate, which is very important. But what about Medicare? Isn't that a mandate? Everything we do is a mandate.
I actually was nodding my head when he said that I wrote a letter to Hillary, and we were hoping that she would be able to come up with something that would not leave the agricultural men and women, because I was the agriculture commissioner at that particular point in time. We had no idea it was going to be the monstrosity that's known as Hillary Care. Speaking of letters, I was more interested in the one that you wrote to Ronald Reagan back and said, I'm going to quit the party because of the things you believe in.
Oh, I need an answer on that. It had... I strongly supported Ronald Reagan. I was one of 4 in Texas, one of 4 members of Congress that supported Reagan in '76. and I supported him all along, and I supported all his issues and all his programs. But in the 1980s, we spent too much, we taxed too much, we built up our deficits, and it was a bad scene. Therefore, I support the message of Ronald Reagan. The message was great, but the consequence, we have to be honest with ourselves. It was not all that great. Huge deficits during the 1980s, and that is what my criticism was for.
Now, I'd like you to explain your view that Social Security was wrong right from the beginning.
The Republican candidates are talking about ways to transition this program, and it is a monstrous lie. It is a Ponzi scheme to tell our kids that are 25 or 30 years old today, you're paying into a program that's going to be there. Anybody that's for the status quo with Social Security today is involved with a monstrous lie to our kids, and it's not right.
Just this morning, your former political advisor, Karl Rove, said that kind of provocative language could be toxic, as he put it, in a general election. Vice President Cheney gave an interview today to ABC News when he said it's not a Ponzi scheme. Quote, it's a program that a great many people depend on. My understanding is you're standing by every word you've written in that book.
Yes, sir.
Is that right?
You know, Carl has been over the top for a long time in some of his remarks. So, you know, I'm not responsible for Carl anymore. But the fact is,
Vice President Cheney, though, said it's not a Ponzi scheme. You say it is.
Absolutely. If Vice President Cheney or anyone else says that the program that we have in place today and young people who are paying into that expect that program to be sound and for them to receive benefits when they reach retirement age, that is...
The issue in the book Fed Up, Governor, is you say that by any measure, Social Security is a failure. You can't say that to tens of millions of Americans who live on Social Security and those who have lived on it. The governor says, look, states ought to be able to opt out of Social Security. Our nominee has to be someone who isn't committed to abolishing Social Security, but who's committed to saving Social Security.
In place. You cannot keep the status quo in place and not call it anything other than a Ponzi scheme. It is. That is what it is. Americans know that. And regardless of what anyone says, oh, it's not, and that's provocative language, maybe it's time to have some provocative language in this country and say things like, let's get America working.
About it. I believe in the Chilean model, where you give a personal retirement account option so we can move this society from an entitlement society to an empowerment society. Chile had a broken system the way we did 30 years ago. The worker was paying 28 cents on a dollar into a broken system. They finally awakened and put in a system where the younger workers could have a choice. Novel idea. Give them a choice with an account with their name on it, and over time, we would eliminate the current broken system that we have. That is a solution to the problem, rather than continuing to talk about how broken it is. Let's just fix it.
Just this morning, your campaign put out a statement accusing him of pushing for bailout money, supporting welfare for illegal immigrants, and trying to forcibly vaccinate 12-year-old girls against sexually transmitted disease. He's your home state governor. Is he less conservative than meets the eye?
Forcing 12-year-old girls to take an inoculation to prevent this sexually transmitted disease. This is not good medicine, I do not believe. I think it's social misfit. It's not good social policy, and therefore I think this is very bad to do this. But one of the worst parts about that was the way it was done. You know, the governorship in Texas traditionally is supposed to be a weak governorship. I didn't even know they could pass laws by writing an executive order. He did it with an executive order, passed it. The state was furious, and the legislature overwhelmingly, probably 90%, I don't know exactly, overwhelmingly repeated.
There's a long list of diseases that cost our state and cost our country. It was on that list. Now, did we handle it right? Should we have talked to the legislature first before we did it? Probably so. But at the end of the day, I will always err on the side of saving lives.
I want to get back to this Gardasil issue. You know, we have Governor Perry's out there and claiming about states' rights and states' rights. How about parental rights being more important than states' rights? How about having, instead of an opt-out, an opt-in? If you really cared, you could make the case, instead of forcing me as a parent, and I have 7 children too. The wide receivers here have on the ends here have 7 children each. But I am offended that the government would tell me, and by an executive order, without even going through the process of letting the people have any kind of input. I would expect this from President Obama. I would not expect this from someone who's calling himself a conservative governor.
Congressman Paul, this same line, you want to abolish the TSA. What would exist in its place?
Well, the airlines are responsible for carrying their cargo and their passengers. I mean, why should we assume that a bureaucracy can do better? And look at the monstrosity we have at the airports. Just remember, 9/11 came about because there was too much government. Government was more or less in charge. They told the pilots they couldn't have guns, and they were told never to resist. They set up the stage for all this. So no, private markets do a good job in protecting, much better than this bureaucracy called the TSA. Let me tell you.
Down. The question is federal aid, something like FEMA. If you object to what it's become and how's it's run, your position is to remove it, take it away, abolish it. What happens in its absence?
Well, what happened before 1979? We didn't have FEMA, and that FEMA just conditioned people to build where they shouldn't be building. We lose the market effect of that.
You yourself have said the party is in danger of becoming anti-science. Who on the stage is anti-science?
Listen, when you make comments that fly in the face of what 98 out of 100 climate scientists have said, when you call into question the science of evolution, all I am saying is that in order for the Republican Party to win, we can't run.
Speaker Gingrich, Chairman of the Federal Reserve Ben Bernanke will come to the end of his term in 2014. Would you reappoint Ben Bernanke?
I would fire him tomorrow.
Why?
I think he's been the most inflationary, dangerous, and power-centered chairman of the Fed in the history of the Fed. I think the Fed should be audited. I think the amount of money that he has shifted around in secret with no responsibility, no accountability, no transparency is absolutely antithetical to a free society. And I think his policies have deepened.
Your state has executed 234 death row inmates, more than any other governor in modern times. Have you struggled to sleep at night with the idea that any one of those might have been innocent?
No, sir, I've never struggled with that at all. The state of Texas has a very thoughtful, a very clear process in place of which when someone commits the most heinous of crimes against our citizens, they get a fair hearing, they go through an appellate process, they go up to the Supreme Court of the United States if that's required. But in the state of Texas, if you come into our state and you kill one of our children, you kill a police officer, you are involved with another crime and you kill one of our citizens, you will face the ultimate justice.
What do you make of that dynamic just happened here? The mention of the execution of 234 people drew applause.
I think Americans understand justice.
Do you think that is any more, providing nutrition at schools for children, a role of the federal government?
Well, I'm sure when he did that, he did it with local government, and there's no rules against that. That'd be fine. So that doesn't imply that you want to endorse the entire welfare state. You endorse all welfare. Anytime I challenge it, you're going to challenge the whole welfare system. No, it isn't authorized in the Constitution for us to run the welfare system. But don't always try to turn around and say that we who believe in liberty, we lack compassion. Because we who believe in liberty and understand the market, we're the only ones that really understand how people are taken care of, how they are fed, and how people have jobs. It's the market. It's never the government that does it. So this whole idea that there's something wrong with people who don't lavish out free stuff from the federal government somehow aren't compassionate enough. I resist those accusations.
Congressman, thank you. Somewhat hard to believe. The campaigns have notified us we're actually a few minutes over the time we were allotted for tonight, and so our questioning will have to come to an end.